everyone. I'm here today to share my experience with journaling throughout this course. Um, this this journey of journaling really began um, from the very moment that I knew that we had to do a journal for this class. I've never journaled before, but when I was a student teacher about 4 years ago, my student teaching supervisor gifted me this journal called Helping Kids Grow, a journal of appreciation quotes for teachers. And she wrote this really beautiful note about the joys of teaching. The ending says, "Go change lives and make sweet memories." And I was very intimidated by journaling. I had no idea how to do it. So this kind of just became a keepsake that I kept up on the shelf. And then when I saw for this course that we needed a journal, I thought, oh, well, this might be the perfect time to get this out. But then I felt very intimidated by starting on the first pages because I thought to myself, well, what if I want to use the beginning of this book for something else? Like, the way that Melissa had originally intended it when she gifted it to me. So I started in the middle of this journal, and there's many blank pages in the beginning. But, alas, here's the very first entry I ever did for any journal. I dated it. This one was August 26th. And this was for Module 1, all about storytelling. So, I started by telling the story of how my sister and I used to play pretend witches all the time. And as children, we don't even realize that we are storytelling when we're really just using imaginative play. And then I just tied it into how after we were done playing, we would go inside, and my dad, who was an avid reader and still is an avid reader, would make it a point that every night my sister and I would read books with either he'd read them to us, or when we got a little bit older, we would have like time set aside that we were all reading. So it was kind of like, as a child, our whole day really revolved around storytelling, between the imaginative play and then that big chunk of time set aside to be immersed in a book. So that was really nice to think back on. And then I came up with 2 new words, which was a very fun prompt, I felt like. One was cophromuously, and that means in an instant. So she appeared cophromuously, as if out of thin air. And then the other one I came up with was Zecchio, which is modern. So the city had a very young and Zecchio vibe. And then for the last Module 1 prompt, I just expanded upon my I am statement that we had made. I do want to say that it was really fun looking back on these earlier modules, specifically for the journals, because I could sense it was just the timidness that I had towards journaling. I was very uncomfortable. It felt like I was writing for an audience. So, I felt more reserved. I mainly just answered the questions in this first one and never really tried to expand in a different direction, like drawing, or that was all I really did. And then as I continued to progress in this course, I saw the shift in my journaling leaning more towards drawing and art and other styles of writing. So then for Module 2, this is kind of that first shift that I was talking about, when the prompt was to go find, I believe it was to find a small rock or a pebble, and I had sketched mine originally on this side, and then I thought, well, why not sketch the whole area that I'm in right now? So I live in Ithaca, and Taganic Falls is where I went and found this pebble. It had a really cool brown streak with this chip on the side, and drawing this and this while being out in nature, this was the prompt that I was like, I think journaling is for me. And I will say that throughout this semester, I have had a really difficult time balancing my first semester of full-time grad school classes with being a full-time kindergarten teacher, and then trying to take care of myself and being the best self I can be for my students. It was really difficult, and the one thing that I felt like I kept up with all semester, not just because it was for the class, but because it really was healing, and it was just a moment of peace for me, was this journal. So that's when I really started to take the time to think like, oh, I could be drawing and writing. So anyway, here's Taganic Falls, the location where I found this pebble. And then down here was the prompt where we would draw or write some more plosive sounds. And I picked stop, bed, and pop. And I had a lot of fun incorporating the letters into those pictures. Next, Module 3 was all about water. And I actually shared this story in a different class this semester. Sea turtles seems to be a theme that's popping back up for me. And I told the story about how when I was 7 years old, my family and I were walking on a beach in Florida. It was just me, my mom, and my dad. And the sun was setting. As we approached, there was this crowd of people making this line. It was this odd line from one side of the beach all the way to the where the waves were breaking. And we peeked our head between all the people, and there were hundreds of these tiny little baby sea turtles crawling towards the ocean. And there were people with umbrellas like batting seagulls away. But I always say that ever since that moment, I felt such a connection to the water, like seeing these tiny little creatures make this journey, knowing that some of them can live to be 100 years old. I just found that to be really magical. And then I actually have to flip a couple pages because I began using this journal. Again, I never journaled before, but then I began using this to expand outside of even just the questions that were being asked in these modules, but just like journaling for the sake of journaling. Here's Module 4, where this is where I created a story about someone who floats into the air. I just want to give a little trigger warning that this story was actually written when the school district that I work at had a suicide by a student in the high school. And we're a very close-knit community, so it shook everybody up a little bit, but I just really thought of that student as I created this poem about somebody floating up, thinking about feeling lighter and people missing them, but also being in a place that was peaceful and calm amongst clouds, very serene. So this one was a really special entry. And then this next one was actually where we were told, or where the prompt was to do 2 R's at the bus stop, and one was the rolling R and the other was the regular R sound. And it made me think when I was saying them, the rolling R is like a cat going prrrr, and then the regular R sound made me think of a dog going grrr. So I was like, oh my gosh, it's a cat and a dog waiting for the bus. There they are. And when I thought about the happy cat purring and the angry dog growling, and then the prompt underneath it was create a cover for your collection of poems, and mine was the Poetry Playground, a collection of poems to support SEL, social emotional learning. And I thought, well, an angry dog and a happy cat for the Poetry Playground seemed pretty appropriate. So that was what I decided to do also as my cover. And then the last entry that I did for Module 5 was a heart map. Again, I really enjoyed the first heart map that we did, so for this entry I knew I wanted to do another one. So I did a big heart with just the small moments and little things. I put January 1st, which is the date that my partner and I are moving into our first house together. More travel. My family and I went to Italy this summer, and it was just the most amazing experience. I put learn and grow for both myself and my students. This semester has absolutely been a learning experience. co-workers becoming friends down here. I could not do the job that I do without the amazing people supporting me every single day. I put books down here just because books and stories have been such a huge part of my life since I can remember. I put growing family because my partner's sister found out she's having a baby, and people in my family are getting married, and just lots of fun things happening. I put a heart for Mary Poppins because I'll be performing in a show for the first time in 6 years, which I'm ecstatic about. I just can't wait to get started on that. And then the last heart is just a wish and a hope that I have, which is full bellies. Thinking about my students. I work in a district that a large portion of our student body lives under the poverty line, and with SNAP benefits being cut, I know a lot of families are struggling, and I just go home every night hoping that my students are at school the next day so that they can get 2 hot meals. And they are very near and dear to my heart, those kids. So this is my heart map, and the last entry for this course, not my last journal entry. I think that I have officially become somebody who enjoys journaling, which I never thought I would say, but I am very grateful for all that I've learned throughout this semester, and just some of the things that I'll take with me for my students, but also just for myself personally. I found this experience to be incredibly healing and informative, and I can't wait to continue this practice. So thank you, everyone.